It's December 1985, and the Consumers Distributing at Fairview Mall is packed with Christmas shoppers. But this isn't a normal retail store. There are no shelves to browse, no products to touch, just rows of laminated catalogs chained to wooden counters, and families hunched over them, frantically flipping pages. A mother finds what she's looking for: a Cabbage Patch Kid, item number 543-2891. She fills out a small paper slip with a golf pencil, checking boxes for quantity and item number. Her handwriting must be clear. One wrong digit, and you get the wrong product. She joins the queue, slip clutched in hand, while her kids press their faces against the glass barrier separating customers from the mysterious warehouse behind. At the counter, a clerk takes the slip, punches the numbers into a computer terminal, and waits. Somewhere in the back, invisible machinery whirs to life. A conveyor belt activates. The item travels through a maze of storage, emerges through a small opening, and the clerk hands over the box. Transaction complete. No browsing, no impulse purchases, just catalog, slip, wait, receive. This was shopping at Consumers Distributing, and it was everywhere in Canada. Over 300 stores from coast to coast, catalogs in millions of homes. For 2 generations of Canadians, this strange, warehouse-based catalog ordering system was how you bought bicycles, toys, small appliances, electronics, jewelry, and sporting goods. It was efficient. It was cheap. It was uniquely weird. Then, seemingly overnight, it vanished. By 1996, every Consumers Distributing in Canada had closed. The catalogs stopped arriving. The conveyor belts stopped moving. The entire concept disappeared so completely that younger Canadians have no memory of it at all. How does a retail chain with 300 locations, dominant market position, and a business model that essentially predicted online shopping simply cease to exist? How do you go from being a household name to being completely forgotten in less than a decade? The answer reveals one of retail's greatest paradoxes. Sometimes being ahead of your time means you're perfectly positioned for the future, until you're not. Consumers. Distributing invented catalog pickup 40 years before click and collect became standard. They pioneered warehouse-to-customer efficiency decades before Amazon made it ubiquitous. They eliminated showroom costs and passed savings to customers long before that became e-commerce gospel. But they couldn't evolve, couldn't adapt, couldn't bridge from paper catalogs to digital platforms. And in the end, the very business model that made them successful became the reason they failed. This isn't a story about a retailer losing to better competition. Consumers Distributing didn't fail because Walmart or Toys R Us offered superior service. They failed because they couldn't translate their revolutionary catalog-based system into the digital age. They were too early with the right idea and too late realizing the world had changed. Where did this forgotten warehouse giant go? Why don't younger Canadians know about a chain that was once as ubiquitous as Canadian Tire? The answer lies in catalog pages, conveyor belts, and the moment when analog efficiency met digital disruption and couldn't adapt fast enough. Thesis and stakes. This is not just about a catalog showroom chain. This is about innovation that becomes obsolete. It's about business models that revolutionize retail but can't survive their own success. It's about the difference between being early and being sustainable. It's about the moment when the future you predicted arrives, but in a form you didn't anticipate and can't compete with. When Consumers Distributing died, it took with it a uniquely Canadian shopping experience. The ritual of catalog browsing, the anticipation of waiting for your item, the efficiency of warehouse pickup. But more importantly, it demonstrated a crucial business lesson. Operational efficiency alone doesn't guarantee survival. You must evolve. You must adapt. You must be willing to cannibalize your own model before someone else does it for you. The Consumers Distributing story still matters today. It's why retailers obsess over omni-channel experiences. It's why buy online, pick up in store became standard. It's why efficiency without customer experience eventually fails. And it's why being first to market with an innovation doesn't guarantee you'll be the one who profits from it long term. This is about vision, about rigidity, about the retail revolution that happened too early and ended too abruptly, and about what we lost when the conveyor belts stopped and the catalogs disappeared. The consumer's distributing story begins in 1957, but not in Canada. Jack Stupp and his partners opened the first catalog showroom in Chicago, creating a retail concept that would eventually spread across North America and revolutionize how people bought consumer goods. The idea was brilliantly simple. Eliminate expensive retail showroom space, store inventory in efficient warehouses, publish detailed catalogs with photographs and specifications, and let customers order from the catalog for warehouse pickup. No sales staff pushing upgrades, no expensive store fixtures, no rent on prime retail space, just catalogs, counters, and conveyor belts delivering products from warehouse to customer. The economics were compelling. Traditional retail required massive showroom space to display inventory, sales staff to assist customers, prime locations to attract traffic. All of this added cost that got passed to customers through higher prices. Catalog showrooms eliminated these costs. Product sat in cheap warehouse space, minimal staff handled transactions. Locations could be secondary spaces with lower rent. The savings went directly to pricing, typically 20 to 40% below traditional retail. In 1962, the concept came to Canada. The first consumers distributing opened in Toronto, bringing the catalog showroom model to Canadian shoppers. The timing was perfect. Post-war suburban expansion was creating new shopping habits. Families wanted value. The catalog showroom offered exactly that: brand name products at discount prices, no frills efficiency, and the convenience of catalog browsing at home. The Canadian operation expanded carefully through the 1960s. 10 stores by 1965, 20 by 1970. Each location followed the same blueprint. A small retail storefront, a large warehouse behind, counters separating customers from inventory, and those distinctive chained catalogs where customers browsed products. The catalog itself was the star. Published twice yearly, spring/summer and fall/winter, it was a thick, glossy book featuring thousands of products. Toys, electronics, sporting goods, jewelry, housewares, small appliances. Each item had a photograph, description, specifications, and most importantly, an item number. That number was everything. You wrote it on your order slip, the clerk entered it, and the warehouse system retrieved your product. Canadian families kept these catalogs. They arrived in the mail, got placed on coffee tables, and became browsing material. Kids flipped through toy sections, circling birthday wishes. Teenagers studied stereo equipment and cameras. Parents planned purchases, comparing item numbers and prices against competitors. The catalog was shopping preparation. The store was transaction efficiency. What made consumers distributing successful wasn't just low prices, it was the psychology of the experience. Browsing a catalog at home was leisurely, pressure-free. You could compare options, read specifications, plan your purchase without a salesperson hovering. Then, when ready, you'd visit the store, complete a quick transaction, and leave with your item. It felt modern, efficient, smart. By 1975, Consumers Distributing operated over 100 locations across Canada. They'd become a household name, synonymous with catalog shopping and warehouse efficiency. The model was proven, the growth was steady, the future seemed limitless. But already, the seeds of future problems were being planted. The very efficiency that made Consumers Distributing successful, the catalog slip warehouse system, was also making them inflexible, unable to adapt, and vulnerable to changing consumer preferences they couldn't quite see coming. The 1980s were Consumers Distributing's glory years. The chain peaked at over 300 stores across Canada, with catalogs reaching into millions of homes. For middle-class Canadian families, consumers distributing was simply where you bought certain categories of products. Not everything, you didn't buy groceries or clothing there, but for toys, electronics, sporting goods, small appliances, and jewelry, it was the default choice. The catalog had become a Canadian cultural artifact. Twice a year, the new edition arrived. Families would gather around kitchen tables, flipping through pages, planning purchases. The Christmas catalog was especially anticipated. Kids knew exactly when it arrived, usually late October, and would immediately turn to the toy section, marking pages, circling item numbers, building wish lists. The toy section was extensive. Pages and pages of action figures, dolls, board games, bicycles, electronic toys, each item photographed, described, priced. For parents, it was comparison shopping made easy. For kids, it was a wish book, a catalog of possibilities. That ritual of circling items, writing down item numbers for Santa, became part of many Canadian childhoods in the 80s. Electronics were another major category. Stereos, televisions, VCRs, cameras, telephones, calculators. The catalog showed specifications in detail: watts, channels, features. Consumers distributing positioned themselves as experts in electronics, offering brand names at prices traditional retailers couldn't match. Where Eaton's or the Bay would charge $499 for a VCR, Consumers Distributing offered the same model for $349. The shopping experience itself became familiar ritual. You'd arrive at the store, grab a catalog from the counter, or bring your own from home. Flip to your desired page, write down the item number on a small paper slip, fill in quantity, and join the queue. At busy times, Christmas shopping season, back to school, Boxing Day, the queues could be long. 20, 30 people waiting, slips in hand, watching the conveyor belt deliver items to other customers. Behind the glass barrier, you could glimpse the warehouse. Shelves rising to the ceiling, packed with boxed inventory, staff moving through aisles with picking lists, the conveyor belt system carrying items forward. It was mysterious, mechanical, efficient. Kids especially were fascinated. Where did their toy come from in that warehouse maze? How did the system know where to find item 543-2891? The truth was both simpler and more complex. Items were stored by category and number. When a clerk entered an item number, the system directed warehouse staff to the correct location. They'd retrieve the item, place it on the conveyor belt, or hand it directly to front counter staff. During peak times, dozens of items were moving simultaneously through the system. It worked remarkably well. Order accuracy was high, wait times reasonable. What Consumers Distributing excelled at was inventory management. Because products sat in warehouse space rather than display showrooms, they could stock deep inventory without the cost constraints traditional retailers faced. Popular items rarely sold out. The catalog promised availability and generally delivered. This reliability built trust. Customers knew they could count on Consumers Distributing having the item they wanted, at the price advertised, ready for pickup. The business model generated impressive margins. Warehouse space was cheap, staff requirements were minimal, a few counter clerks, warehouse pickers, managers, no commissioned salespeople, no expensive store fixtures, no elaborate displays. The overhead savings meant Consumers Distributing could undercut traditional retailers by 20 to 40% and still profit handsomely. By 1985, annual sales exceeded $1 billion. The chain employed over 5,000 Canadians. Market research showed exceptional brand awareness. Over 90% of Canadians knew Consumers Distributing, and the majority had shopped there within the past year. For toys, small appliances, and certain electronics categories, Consumers Distributing commanded 30 to 40% market share. The future seemed secure. The model worked. Customers loved the value. Growth continued. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. But the warning signs were subtle, easy to dismiss, hidden beneath continued short-term success. And by the time Consumers Distributing recognized the threats, it was already too late to adapt. Let's talk about what made shopping at Consumers Distributing so distinctively strange. and why that strangeness was both the brand's strength and, ultimately, its fatal weakness. Traditional retail is tactile. You browse shelves, pick up products, examine them, compare options in person. A toy store lets kids hold toys. An electronics store lets you test speakers. A jewelry store lets you try on rings. This physical interaction is fundamental to how humans shop. We want to touch, feel, verify before buying. Consumers distributing eliminated all of that. You browsed photographs in a catalog. You couldn't touch the product before purchase, couldn't verify quality, couldn't compare in person. You looked at a picture, read a description, wrote down an item number, and trusted you'd get what you expected. This created a unique psychology. Some customers loved it, no pressure, no sales tactics, just efficient transactions. Others hated it, too impersonal, too risky, too weird. You were essentially buying blind, relying entirely on catalog descriptions and brand names to guide decisions. The order slip itself was a source of tension. Those small paper forms with boxes for item numbers and quantity. Your handwriting had to be legible, one wrong digit, writing 5432891 instead of 5432981, and you'd get the wrong product. Clerks tried to catch errors, but busy times meant mistakes happened. You'd wait at the pickup counter, excited for your item, and receive something completely different. Then began the process of returns, exchanges, corrections. Returns were especially frustrating. Because you hadn't seen the actual product before purchase, return rates were higher than traditional retail. The camera wasn't quite what you expected. The toy was smaller than the catalog photo suggested. The jewelry looked cheap in person. Returning items meant another trip to the store, another queue, another wait. The efficiency that made initial purchases quick became inefficiency on returns. The warehouse barrier added to the strangeness. You could see staff moving through the warehouse, could glimpse shelves packed with inventory, but couldn't access it directly. You were separated by glass, by policy, by the system itself. This created a weird power dynamic. The warehouse held all the products, the staff controlled access, and you were supplicant, waiting for the conveyor belt to deliver your item. Kids especially found this fascinating and frustrating. The toy section in the catalog was extensive, but you couldn't play with anything before purchase. You couldn't verify that the action figure moved the way the catalog suggested. Couldn't test whether the electronic game was actually fun. You made your choice based on pictures and descriptions, crossed your fingers, and hoped. During peak shopping times, the week before Christmas, Boxing Day sales, the system strained. Queues stretched through the store. Wait times exceeded 30 minutes. The warehouse couldn't keep pace with order volume. Items sold out, leaving customers disappointed after long waits. Staff became stressed, errors increased, and the efficient system that usually worked smoothly became chaotic. Yet despite all this weirdness, customers kept coming. Why? Price. The savings were significant enough to tolerate the inconvenience. A toy that cost $29.99 at Toys R Us cost $19.99 at Consumers Distributing. For budget-conscious families, which was most Canadian families, that $10 difference mattered. Multiply that across Christmas shopping, and you saved $100 to $200 by accepting catalog browsing and warehouse pickup. The catalog itself became comfort in the weirdness. Because you browsed at home, you could take time, discuss options with family, avoid the pressure of in-store shopping. Many customers preferred this. They'd spend evenings with the catalog, planning purchases, and then execute quick in-store transactions. The weirdness was part of the process, but it was predictable weirdness. Familiar weirdness. What Consumers Distributing never quite grasped was that this weirdness was tolerable only as long as the value proposition remained overwhelming. The moment competitors matched prices or offered more convenient alternatives, the tolerance would evaporate. Customers would abandon the catalog slip warehouse ritual for more normal shopping experiences. That moment was coming, faster than anyone realized. The retail landscape that had nurtured Consumers Distributing began changing in the late 1980s, And by the early 1990s, that change became an avalanche that buried the catalog showroom model. First came Toys R Us. The American toy superstore chain entered Canada in 1984, bringing a completely different approach. Instead of catalogs and warehouses, Toys R Us offered massive showrooms where kids could see, touch, and play with toys. Aisles packed with inventory organized by category, allowing browsing and discovery. Parents could verify quality before purchase. Kids could beg for items they discovered while walking the aisles. Initially, consumers distributing wasn't too worried. Toys R Us prices were higher. Their showroom model cost more to operate. But Toys R Us had something consumers distributing couldn't match: experience. Shopping there was fun for kids, convenient for parents, and increasingly, the price difference didn't matter enough to justify catalog shopping. Then came Walmart. The Arkansas giant crossed into Canada in 1994, purchasing 122 Woolco stores and converting them virtually overnight. Walmart's scale was unprecedented. Their purchasing power, logistics sophistication, and efficiency made them devastating competitors. Where consumers distributing used catalog showrooms to reduce costs, Walmart used global supply chains and just-in-time inventory. The result? Walmart matched or beat consumers distributing prices while offering traditional retail browsing. But the threat that truly devastated consumers distributing came from a different direction. Category killers. Best Buy for electronics, Home Depot for tools, Sport Chek for sporting goods, Business Depot, later Staples, for office supplies. These specialized retailers focused on specific categories, offered deep selection, competitive prices, and knowledgeable staff. They combined the browsing experience of traditional retail with the value pricing of warehouse models. For consumers distributing, this was existential. Their strength had been offering multiple categories under one catalog: toys, electronics, sporting goods, housewares, jewelry. But they were generalists in every category. Best Buy could offer 10 times the electronics selection. Toys R Us had twice the toy variety. Sport Chek had better sporting goods expertise. Consumers distributing couldn't compete with specialized depth. The catalog model, once an advantage, became a liability. Catalogs were published twice yearly, meaning product selection was static for months. If a new toy became popular mid-season, consumers distributing couldn't quickly add it. Their catalog was already printed, distributed, and controlling inventory. Meanwhile, Toys R Us could stock hot items within days. Electronics were especially problematic. Technology was evolving rapidly in the early 1990s. New models, new features, rapid obsolescence. The 6-month catalog cycle couldn't keep pace. By the time the spring catalog arrived, half the electronics featured were already outdated. Customers shopping at Best Buy or Future Shop saw current models, not last season's inventory. Pricing pressure intensified. Walmart's everyday low pricing matched consumers distributing on many items. Toys R Us ran sales that beat catalog prices. Best Buy offered price-matching guarantees. The 20 to 40% savings that had justified catalog shopping were evaporating. And without that compelling value proposition, why tolerate the weirdness? Customer behavior shifted. Younger shoppers, Gen X and early millennials, preferred browsing to catalog ordering. They wanted to see products, compare in person, make immediate decisions. The catalog slip warehouse ritual felt outdated, inefficient, annoying. Their parents might remember when consumers distributing was revolutionary, but they didn't care. They wanted modern retail experiences. Consumers distributing tried to adapt. They increased store hours, added some display models so customers could see products before ordering, expanded product categories. But these were band-aids on a fundamentally flawed strategy. The catalog showroom model worked brilliantly in the 1960s to 1980s when it was the only discount option. In the 1990s, surrounded by big box competitors offering better selection, modern shopping experiences, and competitive prices, it was obsolete. Sales declined. First slowly, 5% one year, 8% the next. Then faster as the downward spiral accelerated. Stores that had been profitable for decades started losing money. Inventory turnover slowed. The catalogs that once seemed revolutionary now looked dated, clunky, behind the times. Management recognized the crisis but couldn't solve it. Abandoning the catalog model meant becoming just another retailer, competing head-to-head with Walmart and category specialists. Keeping the catalog model meant slowly bleeding market share. There was no obvious path forward. By 1995, consumers distributing was in freefall, and the end came faster than anyone expected. The final chapter of consumers distributing came swiftly and brutally. In 1996, after 34 years in Canada, the chain announced it was ceasing operations. All 300-plus stores would close. The catalogs would stop. The conveyor belts would go silent, everything liquidated. The announcement shocked customers who still shopped there regularly, but it didn't shock retail analysts. The writing had been on the wall for years. Sales had declined from a peak of over $1 billion to barely $400 million. Losses were mounting. Debt was unsustainable. The business model was obsolete. Closure was inevitable. The liquidation sales were sad affairs. Everything must go. Inventory, fixtures, even the catalogs themselves. Customers who'd shopped at consumers distributing for decades came to scavenge final deals and say goodbye. The atmosphere was nostalgic and melancholy. Staff who'd worked there for years faced unemployment. The conveyor belts that had efficiently delivered millions of products over decades would soon be dismantled and sold for scrap. What went wrong? Why couldn't consumers distributing evolve? The fundamental problem was rigidity. The entire business model was built around catalogs, warehouses, and physical pickup. This infrastructure couldn't easily pivot to emerging retail trends. When the internet began enabling online shopping in the mid-1990s, consumers distributing should have been perfectly positioned. They already understood catalog to warehouse to customer logistics, but they couldn't make the leap. Part of this was technological. Consumers distributing's inventory systems were built for physical catalogs and in-store pickup, not e-commerce. Upgrading would require massive capital investment at exactly the moment they were losing money. Management couldn't justify the risk. Part was cultural. Consumers distributing's leadership had built careers around the catalog showroom model. It had worked for 30 years. Admitting it was obsolete meant admitting their expertise was worthless. This created organizational paralysis. Everyone could see the model failing, but nobody could agree on alternatives. Part was competitive. Even if consumers distributing had built a strong e-commerce platform in 1995, what advantage did they have? Amazon was already rising. Traditional retailers were launching websites. Consumers distributing had brand awareness, but that brand was associated with catalog showrooms, not online innovation. Why would customers choose them for internet shopping? The geographic reality of Canada also worked against them. Consumers distributing's efficiency came from warehouse concentration, store in front, warehouse behind. This worked for in-store pickup but created shipping challenges for e-commerce. Delivering across Canada's vast distances was expensive. Competitors like Amazon built logistics networks specifically for shipping. Consumers distributing's infrastructure was wrong for the digital future. There was also a timing problem. Consumers distributing needed to invest heavily in digital transformation exactly when they were bleeding cash. Banks wouldn't lend to a dying business model. Shareholders wouldn't accept more losses. The company was trapped, too weak to invest in change, too outdated to survive without it. By late 1996, the last consumers distributing stores had closed. The catalogs stopped arriving. The brand disappeared from Canadian retail. Warehouse spaces were sold or leased to other tenants. Store locations became cellular phone shops, dollar stores, whatever businesses could afford the rent. The closure left a strange void. For customers who'd relied on Consumers Distributing for decades, there was genuine loss. Where would they buy affordable toys now? Where could they browse extensive catalogs at home? The ritual was gone, replaced by nothing specific, just the general sprawl of big box retail and emerging e-commerce. Employees faced harsh transitions: warehouse workers, counter clerks, managers. Skills that were valuable at Consumers Distributing weren't easily transferable. Some found work at Walmart or other big box retailers. Others left retail entirely. The institutional knowledge, how to run an efficient catalog showroom operation, became worthless overnight. The parent company that owned Consumers Distributing tried other ventures but never recaptured success. The brand itself, once worth millions in customer awareness, became retail history, remembered by older Canadians but unknown to younger generations. What's remarkable about Consumers Distributing's demise is how complete it was. Sears tried catalog sales and failed, but the parent company survived. Blockbuster died, but streaming preserved the concept. Consumers Distributing died, and nothing replaced it. The catalog showroom model simply ceased to exist. Or did it? Because when you order something online and pick it up at a store, when you browse Amazon and select Pickup Point Delivery, when you use Buy Online Pickup in Store at Walmart or Best Buy, that's Consumers Distributing. The core concept they pioneered in the 1960s. They just couldn't survive long enough to see it resurrected in digital form. Today, if you search Consumers Distributing online, you'll find nostalgia communities sharing memories, scanned catalog pages, and photographs of abandoned stores. Facebook groups dedicated to Canadian retail history feature lengthy threads about the chain. Reddit posts ask, "Does anyone remember Consumers Distributing?" and receive dozens of responses from older Canadians sharing stories. The memories are remarkably specific. People remember the weight of the catalog, the feel of the golf pencil filling out order slips, the sound of the conveyor belt, the anticipation of watching items emerge from the warehouse, the distinctive layout, counters, catalogs, glass barriers. These sensory details stick with people decades later. The catalogs themselves have become collectibles. Original consumers. Distributing catalogs from the 1970s to 80s sell on eBay for $50 to $100. People buy them for nostalgia, for the vintage toy and electronics photographs, for the reminder of what shopping used to be. Flipping through these catalogs is time travel. Products that seemed cutting edge in 1985 look hilariously dated now. But the format, the presentation, the careful item numbering all recall a specific retail era. What's interesting is how the Consumers Distributing experience was uniquely Canadian, but also part of a broader North American retail phenomenon. Similar catalog showroom chains existed across the United States. Service Merchandise, Best Products, McDade's, all followed the same model. All thrived in the 1970s to 80s. All died in the 1990s. Victims of the same competitive pressures and rigidity. But in Canada, Consumers Distributing held special cultural significance. It was one of the few truly national retail chains in an era when Canadian retail was fragmented. The catalogs reached Newfoundland to British Columbia. The stores operated from suburbs to small towns. For Canadian families, particularly middle-class families watching budgets, Consumers Distributing was simply part of life. The chain's disappearance marks a specific moment in Canadian retail evolution, the transition from local/regional merchants to big box dominance. Before Walmart, before category killers, Consumers Distributing was how Canadians accessed affordable consumer goods. After Walmart, that role vanished, absorbed into the big box ecosystem. Some former warehouse locations still stand, converted to other uses but recognizable by their layout, large warehouse space attached to smaller retail frontage. Occasionally, you'll drive past and recognize the bones of a former Consumers Distributing, even if the signage is long gone and the current tenant completely different. The people who worked at Consumers Distributing maintain alumni networks. Reunion groups on social media where former employees share stories, photos, and memories of working the counters or picking items in the warehouse. There's pride in those stories. Consumers Distributing was efficient, well-run, and treated employees reasonably well. People remember it fondly, even as they acknowledge the business model was doomed. Younger Canadians learning about Consumers Distributing today react with disbelief. You couldn't touch the products before buying. You had to write down item numbers on paper slips. You waited for a conveyor belt. It sounds absurd from a 2026 perspective where instant gratification and seamless e-commerce are expected. But in context, it made perfect sense. It was simply the best available model for discount retail before digital technology enabled better alternatives. The nostalgia for Consumers Distributing isn't about wanting the chain back. Nobody seriously wishes catalog showrooms would return. It's nostalgia for the simplicity of that retail era, for childhood memories of circling toys in catalogs, for the ritual of shopping that felt special precisely because it was different from modern convenience. The Consumers Distributing story offers profound lessons about innovation, adaptation, and the dangers of business model rigidity. Lesson 1. Being first doesn't guarantee lasting success. Consumers Distributing pioneered the catalog to warehouse to pickup model that modern retailers now use with buy online, pick up in store. They invented the concept decades early. But being first meant they built infrastructure and culture around an analog version of the idea. When digital technology enabled better execution of the same concept, they couldn't adapt. Amazon, Walmart, and Best Buy now profit from the model Consumers Distributing invented, but Consumers Distributing itself is dead. Innovation requires continuous evolution, not just initial invention. Lesson 2. Efficiency isn't enough if the customer experience degrades. Consumers Distributing was ruthlessly efficient. Minimal retail space, low overhead, warehouse optimization. This efficiency enabled low prices. But efficiency came at the cost of customer experience. No browsing, no product examination, inconvenient return processes. As long as the price advantage was significant, customers tolerated inferior experience. When competitors matched prices while offering better experiences, efficiency alone couldn't save them. Modern retail understands this. Efficiency must serve customer experience, not replace it. Lesson 3. Generalist models lose to specialist competition. Consumers Distributing offered toys, electronics, sporting goods, jewelry, housewares, a bit of everything. This breadth made the catalog appealing for one-stop shopping. But when Toys R Us, Best Buy, Sport Check, and other category specialists arrived, they offered deeper selection, better expertise, and superior product knowledge in their specific categories. Consumers Distributing couldn't compete with specialized depth across multiple categories. Today's retail landscape is dominated by specialists and super specialists for this exact reason. Lesson 4. Infrastructure built for one model can become a prison. Consumers Distributing's entire operation, catalog publishing, warehouse layouts, store locations, inventory systems, was optimized for physical catalog showrooms. This infrastructure worked brilliantly for decades. But when the retail environment changed, that same infrastructure became inflexible. They couldn't easily pivot to e-commerce because their systems weren't built for it. They couldn't convert to traditional retail because their spaces were wrong. Infrastructure that creates competitive advantage can become strategic liability if it prevents adaptation. Lesson 5. Cultural and organizational resistance kills companies. Consumers Distributing's leadership knew the catalog showroom model was struggling. They saw competitors succeeding with different approaches. They watched sales decline year after year, but they couldn't bring themselves to fundamentally reimagine the business. Part was financial. Transformation costs money they didn't have. Part was psychological. Admitting the model was obsolete meant admitting decades of expertise was worthless. This organizational paralysis is how companies die. They see the cliff approaching, but can't turn the wheel. Lesson 6. Timing matters as much as innovation. Consumers Distributing's catalog-to-warehouse model was revolutionary in 1962, when most retail was full-service department stores. It was competitive in the 1970s to 80s when discount retail was emerging. It was obsolete by the 1990s when big box and e-commerce arrived. The same innovation can be brilliant, competitive, or worthless depending on timing and competitive context. Understanding when your advantage is eroding is as important as building the advantage initially. Lesson 7. Customer loyalty is conditional. Consumers Distributing enjoyed strong brand awareness and customer loyalty for decades. Surveys showed high satisfaction. People shopped there regularly, but that loyalty evaporated quickly when better alternatives emerged. Customers didn't abandon Consumers Distributing out of malice. They simply found options that better served their needs. Retail loyalty is transactional. You must continuously earn it by offering superior value or experience. Past loyalty provides no protection against future competitive threats. These lessons echo across retail history. Sears faced similar challenges: catalog-based retail that couldn't transition to e-commerce despite having all the right infrastructure. Blockbuster owned physical distribution but couldn't pivot to streaming. Radio Shack had electronics expertise but lost to big box and online competitors. The pattern repeats: successful business models that become rigid, companies that can't adapt, competitive advantages that turn into strategic liabilities. The difference with Consumers Distributing is how completely they were erased. Most failed retailers leave some legacy: brand recognition, partial survival, or at minimum, continued awareness. Consumers Distributing vanished so thoroughly that Canadians under 30 have no memory of it. That complete erasure is the ultimate lesson. In retail, you adapt or you disappear entirely. There's a strange irony to the Consumers Distributing story. When you order something on Amazon and select warehouse pickup, when you buy online and collect in-store at Walmart, when you use Best Buy's buy online pickup in-store service, you're essentially shopping the way Consumers Distributing operated 40 years ago. Browse remotely, order by item number, pick up from warehouse. The concept they pioneered is now retail standard, but Consumers Distributing isn't around to see it. They invented catalog pickup but couldn't survive long enough to translate that innovation to the digital age. They proved the model works but died before digital technology made it seamless. They were the pioneers who didn't make it to the promised land. What makes their story particularly poignant is that it didn't have to end this way. With different leadership, earlier investment in digital infrastructure, willingness to cannibalize their catalog model before competitors made it obsolete, Consumers Distributing could have evolved into Canada's Amazon. The pieces were there: customer trust, logistics expertise, warehouse efficiency, nationwide presence. They just couldn't make the leap from paper catalogs to digital platforms. Today, the empty warehouse spaces, the scanned catalog pages in nostalgia groups, the memories of conveyor belts and order slips, that's all that remains of Canada's forgotten warehouse giant. A chain that once operated 300-plus stores, served millions of customers, employed thousands of Canadians, published catalogs that reached into nearly every home, simply vanished. For those who remember, there's genuine loss. Not for the chain itself, nobody wants catalog showrooms back, but for what Consumers Distributing represented. A uniquely Canadian retail experience. An era when shopping meant catalogs and conveyor belts. A time when discount retail required accepting weirdness in exchange for savings. That era is gone, replaced by seamless e-commerce and abundant big box options. The Consumers Distributing story is about innovation and obsolescence, about efficiency and inflexibility, about being early to a revolution but too rigid to survive it. It's about the retail model that predicted the future but couldn't adapt when that future arrived in unexpected form. And it's about the strange fate of being forgotten. Not remembered as a failure, not studied as a cautionary tale, Just forgotten. Erased so completely that younger Canadians learning about it react with genuine surprise that such a chain ever existed. But for those who spent Saturday afternoons with catalogs, who filled out order slips with golf pencils, who watched conveyor belts deliver toys and electronics and sporting goods, who made consumers distributing part of their shopping routine for decades, the memory remains. The weirdness, the efficiency, the ritual, the forgotten warehouse giant that was once everywhere and then, suddenly, was nowhere. That's what happens when retail innovation becomes retail obsolescence. The catalogs stop arriving, the conveyor belts stop moving, and within a generation, it's as if it never existed at all.